This is my ranking of games like Pragmata that I've played, based purely on my personal experience. Each one is placed from masterpiece down to trash, depending on how well the sci-fi setting is built, how engaging the core gameplay mechanics feel, and how effectively each game keeps the experience fresh and immersive. Let's get straight into the list. Control instantly caught my attention with its strange world, shifting buildings, and supernatural atmosphere that kept surprising me during almost every chapter. I liked how the combat mixed telekinesis, shooting, and fast movement without making encounters feel repetitive for long stretches. Throwing objects across rooms and watching the environment break apart never got old, especially during larger fights against aggressive enemies. The oldest house also felt mysterious in a way that made exploration rewarding because every new area revealed bizarre characters, hidden documents, and strange events connected to the Bureau. Some story moments near the ending felt weaker than the earlier sections, but the gameplay and atmosphere stayed strong enough that I still wanted to keep exploring after the credits finished rolling for many extra hidden secrets. This easily lands in my masterpiece tier. Vanquish immediately felt different, because the movement system turned every fight into a fast and chaotic battle, where standing still usually meant failure. Sliding across arenas, boosting between cover, and firing at giant robotic enemies made the combat feel exciting almost the entire way through. I liked how the boss fights demanded quick reactions instead of relying on simple shooting mechanics, especially during larger encounters filled with explosions and collapsing environments. The futuristic setting also looked great, with massive machines, destroyed highways, and huge action scenes constantly appearing throughout the campaign. The story itself never became very memorable, and most characters felt pretty basic compared to the gameplay side of things. The combat remained satisfying from beginning to end because the pace rarely slowed down and the action constantly pushed things forward. This lands easily in my excellent tier. Dead Space immediately grabbed my attention with its dark sci-fi setting, disturbing enemy designs, and constant feeling that danger was hiding around nearly every hallway. I liked how the combat demanded careful aiming because normal headshots rarely solved encounters against larger necromorph groups. Cutting limbs off enemies while managing ammo and resources made every battle tense without turning the experience into nonstop action. The Ishimura also felt incredibly detailed, with creepy lighting, broken machinery, and unsettling sounds making exploration stressful in the best possible way. I also enjoyed how the remake expanded certain story moments while keeping the horror atmosphere strong from beginning to end. Few horror games maintain this much tension for so many hours, which is why this easily earns a place in my masterpiece tier today. NieR Automata constantly introduced new ideas without making the experience feel messy or exhausting to play through. I liked how the gameplay kept shifting between fast hack-and-slash combat, shooting sections, exploration, and strange story moments that rarely felt predictable. The combat also stayed extremely satisfying because movement felt smooth and battles became more chaotic as new enemy types appeared across different areas. What stayed with me the most was the atmosphere created by the music, ruined environments, and emotional tones surrounding the android characters and machine life forms. Some story sections became confusing at times, but the emotional moments and unique presentation carried the experience forward without losing momentum. Very few games manage to feel this creative for so many hours while also keeping the gameplay consistently fun and varied throughout. This deserves a clear place in my masterpiece tier. Returnal kept me fully focused because every fight demanded quick movement, sharp reactions, and constant attention to enemy attack patterns across each dangerous area. I liked how the combat mixed fast shooting, dodging, and bullet hell mechanics without making encounters feel unfair or impossible to survive. The atmosphere also stayed memorable thanks to the strange alien environments, unsettling audio design, and mysterious tones surrounding Celine's journey through Atropos. Every successful run felt rewarding because the game constantly pushed me to improve instead of relying on luck alone. I also enjoyed how the weapons, upgrades, and risk-reward systems changed the flow of combat during longer runs. The story became confusing at times and left too many unanswered questions, but the gameplay quality remained strong enough that I always wanted another attempt after dying. This easily secures a place in my masterpiece tier. Death Stranding felt unlike most open-world games because so much of the experience focused on movement, preparation, and reconnecting isolated people across dangerous environments. I liked how simple deliveries became tense once rough terrain, BTs, and heavy cargo started affecting every journey across the map. The quiet atmosphere also worked really well, especially during long walks, where the soundtrack and environmental design created a lonely but relaxing feeling. I also enjoyed the online system because structures left behind by other players made the world feel connected in a very unusual way. Some story sections became overly complicated and filled with long explanations that slowed the pacing at times. The combat was never the strongest part either, but traveling through the world and rebuilding connections kept the experience engaging for many hours. This easily belongs in my excellent tier. Binary Domain gave me a surprisingly fun sci-fi shooter experience because the robotic enemies made combat feel far more satisfying than I expected. I liked how enemy machines broke apart during fights, with armor flying off and damaged robots continuing to crawl toward me after losing limbs. The Neo-Tokyo setting also helped the game stand out since the environments mixed futuristic cities, underground ruins, and large action sequences that constantly changed the pace. Some mechanics, like the trust system and voice commands, felt underdeveloped. But the shooting stayed entertaining enough that those issues rarely became frustrating. The story also became more interesting later once the twists surrounding artificial humans started appearing. It may not reinvent cover shooters, but the action and enemy design kept me engaged for many hours. This earns my great tier. Exoprimal had a fun idea with squads fighting huge dinosaur swarms, but the experience became repetitive faster than expected after a few matches. I liked the chaotic moments where hundreds of dinosaurs flooded the screen, because those sections created entertaining action scenes with friends. The different exosuits also added variety since each class handled combat differently depending on situation and team setup. My biggest issue was how long it took before the game introduced its more creative missions and larger cooperative battles. Early hours repeated the same objectives and maps too often, which made progression feel slower than it should have been. The story eventually introduced interesting sci-fi concepts, but reaching those moments required more grinding than I wanted. Gameplay stayed decent enough for occasional play, though not something I kept returning to. This lands in my mediocre tier. Resident Evil 4 places me in a tense rescue mission in a Spanish village that quickly shifts into non-stop survival against infected villagers and terrifying mutations. I liked how the over-the-shoulder combat makes every encounter feel sharp, with precise aiming, quick reactions, and constant pressure from enemies that never stay predictable. The combat variety also stays strong thanks to different weapons, crowd control moments, and environmental traps that can completely change how fights play out. I also enjoyed how the pacing rarely slows down, shifting from village battles to castle fights and more intense set pieces that keep the momentum going. Even the inventory and merchant system adds strategy by forcing smart choices with upgrades and resources. Every section builds tension without losing control of the action. This easily earns a spot in my masterpiece tier. That's my ranking of games like Pragmata based on how they handle combat, atmosphere, and moment-to-moment gameplay. Some stand out through tight mechanics and strong pacing, while others lean more on ideas or structure, but each one delivers a different take on sci-fi action and tension-driven design. Thanks for watching.